Ready to launch our Ring speaker series for the year, and we're doing it in great style. We're excited to have as our guest today Angela Brown, and she grew out of UF, so she's good stock, and has gone out and made a great name for herself. She is involved in, she's vice president and the principal of Meridian Appraisal Group in Winter Springs. They do a few things: commercial real estate, residential, multifamily, large-scale planned developments, golf courses, large acreage, hotels, offices, industrial. So fairly versatile. Oh yes, and net leases, high-end luxury homes. And she has reserved. She also has served, I'm sure, in many other capacities, but among them as a review appraiser for a number of banks. So she's everywhere. She's everywhere, and very well known and very well received in the real estate community of Florida, particularly in Central Florida, where she operates. We're delighted to have her back. She has 25 years of experience doing all of this. She started when she was 5. And has built a great career. She's an MAI, has several other important designations, but that's the one most people recognize. She started out with a firm that we all knew as the firm in Florida, Purdue High Church Smith & Waller, became a principal there, and then moved on to her own, became a director there, and then moved on to her own. So her firm is now Meridian Appraisal Group, and she's a member of our board and our incoming, our new chairman of the advisory board group. So that tells you something about how she's regarded. And Angie, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, and I'd like to say I cannot express how happy I am to be back and invited to talk to you. It's my 3rd time as a Ring speaker, and as kind as Dr. Archer was about my age, I've been in it a little longer than 25 years. I'm a little older than 30, but a little secret on Dr. Archer that many of you don't know is he was one of my professors when I took my real estate classes. So we've got a little fibbing back and forth on each other, but happy to be here. You guys are in a wonderful, wonderful program. Wonderful, Dr. Lane, Dr. Archer, Dr. You're in the best. Tim, you're just in the premier real estate program, and it's an honor to be your board chair. It's something that I've enjoyed doing for a very long time, and this is one of the best parts about it is I get to interact with the students, help guide you through your choices in what kind of commercial real estate you want to get involved in. So when you pass the age of 30, you have to start wearing these. So you're going to see me using glasses a lot today. But I want to make this a very interactive type presentation. So if you have questions along the way, please raise your hand. And I think that helps with the dialogue, and it'll make it a little more interesting. So let's make this as interactive as possible. And if you have any questions, just don't hesitate. I'm happy to answer them if I can. So I decided that the topic that we deal with every single day in valuation and in a lot of commercial real estate disciplines is highest and best use. And just with a show of hands, how many people have a pretty good understanding of what highest and best use is? Okay, and how you develop highest and best use. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a real quick study on highest and best use, because that's what drives value in real estate. And then I'm going to kind of give you a brief overview of valuation in terms of clients, intended uses of appraisal, who uses them, and then how you can take the concept of highest and best use and apply it towards your search on what real estate career path you want to take. Because really, what you want to do is try and narrow down through the process the same things that highest and best use does. So we're going to do a real quick overview on highest and best use, and then we'll move into some of the other aspects of it. So highest and best use. There are lots of definitions by a lot of different organizations, but typically the one definition that's used most is with a federally related transaction, which is driven by the federal registry, or Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac if you're doing an assignment for them. The International Valuation Standards has their own definition of highest and best use, but in essence is the reasonably probable use of property that results in the highest value. Now there's you know, you can tweak that with a whole different interpretation of using different words, but that's the essence of the definition of highest and best use. And there's 4 tests to it. It has to be physically possible, has to be legally permissible, and based on those 2, then you determine what's financially feasible. Now the first 2 don't have to be in order. They can be, you can do physically possible first or legally permissible first, but you can't do financially feasible until you do the first 2. And then after financially feasible is determined, then you figure out what's maximum productive to the property. Now, you do this 2 times, and you do it for vacant land, as vacant, and you do it as improved. So if you have a property that's vacant land, you're only going to do it 1 time, because it's vacant. But if it's proposed, if there's proposed construction with it, you're going to estimate the highest and best use of the property as proposed. Does that meet the 4 criteria? Is that the highest and best use of that property the way it's proposed? If you have a property that's improved, like an office building, you're going to go through the same step as vacant. You're going to say it as if vacant is the correct way you do that. And you go through the same steps, and then you're going to do it as improved. And the gray area comes in when you do it as improved when the property is not at its highest and best use. So you may have a really old office building built in the 1950s, and it's in an area where it's a very high barrier to entry, and land value is appreciating, and everything else is getting torn down around it. Well, is that the highest and best use of the property as improved? Well, it may be, but you got to go through all those steps to determine it. It may be that it's time to tear it down and redevelop it. It may be that it's got an interim use. The land value just quite isn't there to tear it down yet, but maybe 3 to 5 years from now, it will be. So you do the same analysis as vacant and as improved, and there's a lot of detail that you go into to prove those. So on physically possible, you ask yourself the questions. It is the site that, the physical aspects of the site that you're trying to determine, is the property suited for what I think it should be developed with. So what's its size? What's its shape? Does it have utilities to it? What's the access? Is it restricted by anything in terms of access, or is it landlocked? Can I even get to my property? So those are the physical attributes of it. The legally permissible are the zoning that you have on the property, the future land use, any restrictions that may legally restrict the property, such as an easement or a deed restriction or something else that may restrict the property in terms of, let's say there's a cloud on the title, you know, and your research while you're valuing the property, you figure out that there's a cloud on the title, and that's going to impact the highest and best use of this property, which in fact does happen. And you know, there's many times I've done properties where you find that out, and then you have to reach out, go back to the client, talk to them about, okay, here we are now. You know, you thought the assignment was this, but now we're here. Now where do we go? Now what do we do? The 2 previous ones, again, they don't have to be in that order, are going to determine what's financially feasible on the property. And it has to produce a positive return to the property to be financially feasible. So a case in point is a large piece of land that may or may not be zoned for residential, but that probably is going to be the highest and best use of the property. It's owned by an owner who has had it for generations. You know, their parents had it, they have it, and their land basis in it is really, really low, very low. So you go and you do your appraisal, and you come up with a market value of the land. Let's say their land basis was $2,500 per acre. So you do your appraisal and you find out that the current rate is really now $80,000 per acre. So that's good, right? You've got all this equity in this project. And then you do your analysis of the property as proposed, as a proposed residential development. And you do a cost approach, because I've got to put the roads in, the infrastructure in, and then you do your income approach. It's going to take me this long to sell the lots. I'm going to discount it back to a present value. And your income approach and your sales comparison approach should correlate with your cost, right? That's kind of the test of feasibility. Well, if your cost approach is at 19 million and your sales approach and your income approach are at 15 million, you have a problem, right? It's not feasible. Lender's going to say, this is it's too risky, you know, you can't do it. Well, maybe you can. As the appraiser, it's your responsibility to kind of lead the reader on to your conclusion of value. And they should be shaking their head their whole time reading your report, saying, yeah, I agree, I agree. Okay, and so now you've just landed this huge problem in their lap. But if you recognize that the land basis is low because they've held on to it for so long, there's a lot of equity in this project that the lender can still do the deal because there's enough security in the collateral and the equity in the land that it's not feasible under market value, you know, normal buyer, normal seller, a lot of participants in the market, no undue duress in the transaction. It doesn't meet the true test of market value, but it meets the test of investment value. It's feasible to that person and that corporation or whoever owns it because they've had a low basis in the land and they've got equity in the deal. So that's kind of an example of something where highest and best use doesn't normally meet the definition of market value, but you can still make it work. And then supply and demand. You have to look at what's out there in the market. It may be a no-brainer that this project is a 4-story multifamily apartment complex. But if you have 5,000 units coming out of the ground and another 2,000 that are in planning and you're the next one in line, is that really going to be the highest and best use of the property? Well, it may be. Maybe the highest and best use is to hold it and wait for the next wave in the market so that you're situated and ready to go when the next wave comes. Remember, timing, supply and demand. You don't want to be the last guy building an apartment complex when there's 7,000 units coming out of the ground. Case in point, we had a very large apartment developer come into the Orlando area, take a look at our downtown market, did their due diligence, did their analysis, and they said, thanks, but no thanks. We think you guys might be on the bubble. You know, maybe, maybe not. But the information that they got told them market's oversupplied. Okay? Now, once you do this analysis, then you go on to the maximally productive. And then you're going to say, okay, I could be commercial. I can be a retail. I could be an office building. I could be a hotel. I could be, my zoning and land use allow me to do commercial. Then you're going to go through the analysis and the rates of return that are going to tell you, do I do a hotel? Well, I kind of figured out multifamily is oversupplied, so let me look at maybe a multi-tenant shopping center. And you do the analysis on that. The highest return to the land is going to be your highest and best use. And it's not always obvious. In fact, the funnest assignments are the ones where you have to work hard at figuring out what highest and best use is. Publix anchored shopping center, 40,000 square feet, 95% occupancy. Highest and best use as though vacant probably is going to be a Publix anchored shopping center. Highest and best use improved is going to be continued use as a Publix anchored shopping center. Now, kind of tweak that a little bit, and Publix has 2 years remaining on their lease, but they have 3 5-year options to renew. The center hasn't been very well maintained. The traffic patterns are shifting over to the west side of town. Now what's the highest and best use? Well, your data is going to help you determine what you conclude. And it may be that maybe now it's time for an indoor flea market, or a large church that can't find their own property and they're willing to take over the Publix lease, because Publix has kind of said we're not gonna renew. Maybe the traffic patterns are completely different now, and you're not comfortable making the assumption that it's going to be a Publix anymore. So those are the gray areas on highest and best use. But the data is going to be what helps determine what your conclusions are. There's some theories and, not laws, but there's some fundamental things in highest and best use that a lot of appraisers can get themselves into trouble with, and one of them is consistent use theory. And basically what it says is that you have to appraise a property under its highest and best use while the improvements are valued on the basis of another use. So if I've got land that is zoned R3, and, well, a real easy way to think of this is you all can see where an old residential home is on a main thoroughfare and everything around it is now kind of a renovated dentist's office. You know, they're all changing over to commercial. So you've got a home that's occupied residential, and you've got professional offices around it. Well, so consistent use is you appraise the land with the commercial zoning, right? And then you value the improvements. You value the property under the sales comparison approach as a residential occupied home and as maybe a converted residence to an office. And you look at those three values and you determine which one is the highest return to the land. Well, it may be that the land value just hasn't gotten there yet to remove the improvements or renovate them to that use, maybe an interim use. You may have 5 years or 3 years of interim use income. So, you know, another example is you've got you have a church, and the church is in an area where there's a lot of changes going on in the marketplace, and you have R3 land, very expensive, very valuable land. You value the underlying land as vacant, you value the church, and you find out that they're one and the same. Value of the church is 1.5 million, value of the land is 1.5 million. So what do? What's the highest and best use? Well, you go back to your data, you look at the supply and demand in the market, you look at construction costs, you look at occupancies, you look at trends in the marketplace, and you make the call. And sometimes you're going to have your client disagree with that. It's just the way it is. And then you open the discussion about, okay, well, it could be interim use. We're going to keep this as a church until such time somebody comes in and pays me for the land to develop an apartment complex. So there's other issues in highest and best use that kind of arise every now and then that can pose problems. And one of them is excess and surplus land. And this is a real life situation that happened. We go out and we appraise a kind of an office industrial showroom property, and it's on one piece of land. And then there's an adjacent piece that's owned by the same property owner. And they did an addition. And so we measure our property and we go back and we let the bank know that, did you know about the addition? And they said, well, no. And by the way, it's not part of our collateral. Okay, that's fine, except part of that addition encroaches on the piece that you do have. So this is an instance where you have to determine, is it surplus land? Is it excess land? Is it an illegal use? Did they get a building permit for it? So there's lots of things that can kind of creep into what should be traditionally a pretty easy assignment, and then it turns into something that's a little bit more than that. Building an addition without a building permit. It's an illegal use. They didn't pull a permit, now they've got 6,000 square feet of extra space on their property. Well, what do? Well, as an appraiser, you either have to figure out, can they keep that square footage on their property? Does zoning allow them? Do they meet building codes?
And you have to get all sorts of affidavits from plumbers and electricians, and that's not your responsibility, but you as the appraiser have to determine, can they keep this addition on their property? Or is the municipality gonna come in and make them scrape it off and get rid of it? So these are kind of the things that you deal with on highest and best use. You can see where scraping 6,000 square feet off of a property can impact value. And sometimes those are very contentious issues in terms of, well, now my client doesn't have the collateral that they think they did, and maybe they can keep it on the property. They just have to go through the right channels to get the building permit after the fact. But even then, there's a cost to do that, and the appraiser needs to take that into account. You know, when the property's not at its highest and best use, what do you do? Well, you have that discussion with your client, you make the call. Sometimes it's obvious that it's not at its highest and best use, and everybody knows that. If it is at its highest and best use, then you just move on, and there's no problem. You don't need to reach out to the client, you don't need to talk to them about it. So there's types of value which help drive highest and best use, and the one that we deal with most of the time is market value. And that's the one that, you know, buyer and seller, equally knowledgeable, no duress on either part of the buyer or seller. It's the one that most every transaction is based on, but there's other values too. And highest and best use is going to drive what value you're estimating for your client. And a few of those are fair value, public interest value. Now, public interest value would be something that's intrinsic to the community, or a property that's got, you know, wonderful physical features that, you know, you wouldn't want developed. You would want them to stay the same. Retrospective value. So we do a lot of bank work where sometimes there's foreclosures on the properties. And under retrospective value, sometimes the bank is already foreclosed, but in order to go into court, they have to have the value as of the date of foreclosure. That's going to be a retrospective value. Conversely, if you're appraising a proposed structure, you're going to be estimating the prospective value of that property, a date in the future. And so you're making predictions about what's happening in the future based upon current market data and the trends in the market. Liquidation value is exactly what you think it is. If I have to liquidate this asset in 60 days, what's the value of this property going to be? Well, there's two ways you can do that. You can look at transactions in the marketplace, which is a perfect world. I have exactly the same property over here, and they liquidated, and now I have a sale for that. That's really rare, very rare. But you can find transactions, and you can talk to the buyers and sellers and the lenders in those transactions, and you can ask them, how much did you get this what was it appraised for, and then what kind of a discount did you have to get the liquidation value? Value of a going concern. You've all stayed in hotels before, you've been to car washes before. There's going concern values in those properties. It's the business that is making the money, not necessarily the real estate. The real estate is the vessel for that business operation. So you're estimating the value of the bricks and mortar is one part, and then there is the value of the going concern on top of that, which is what's the value of the operation over here? What's the net income? What's the rate of return? What's going on with this property that's bringing additional value above the bricks and mortar? So the purpose of the appraisal is equally as important, if not more important, because that's going to tell you as the appraiser, why am I doing this? What's the purpose of this appraisal? Why do you need this appraisal? And there's lots of different reasons. The ones I deal with most common are financing for a loan, extension of a loan, foreclosure of a loan, a lot of bank work. I also do litigation work where I have to estimate the value in order to testify. So knowing the exact purpose of the appraisal is going to help you under highest and best use know what the client's objectives are in terms of why I need this. I might need it for IRS tax reporting purposes. I might need it because in my lease, I've got a clause that says, in the 15th year of my lease, before I can renew, we have to establish market rent. So the lessee is going to get one, the lessor is going to get one, and they're going to come together and they're going to decide on what a current market rental rate should be. So you understand that the purpose of this is for a meeting of the minds to establish a new current rental rate, or it may be to establish list price to sell the property. There's lots of reasons appraisals are done, and not all of them are driven or based on market value. It may be investment value. Let's see, tax abatement analysis. Alexis, that's what your father does. Mr. Jones does tax abatement work. Very specialized, very specialized. So knowing the purpose of that helps drive how you're going to prepare the appraisal. Environmental impact analysis is a really interesting one. We've done a couple of assignments, more than a couple, where you've got contaminated land. And yes?
For when it says established listing price, are you working with usually individuals rather than brokers? Wouldn't a broker usually have their own kind of idea? Like, whenever you see brokers packages, they usually kind of create their own performance and create their own listing price, but the market set it. Are you working usually just with individual owners who are selling properties?
Well, that's a good question, because sometimes it is owners. They may live in Colorado and they've got a local broker, but they may be at odds on where the price really should be. And remember, price is different than value. And the listing broker may say, well, I'll list it at this, but I really think it should be here. And the property owner says, well, I want it here. And the broker really wants to close the sale, so they may recommend that, you know, maybe we can settle on getting an appraisal, and the appraisal will tell us where maybe the listing price needs to be, or where the value is, and then we can list it from there. So sometimes it's with the property owner, sometimes it's based on the recommendation of the broker, sometimes it's the bank who owns the asset and has held it for 4 years and they're ready to get rid of it now. And it's been tested and tested and tested, and they want a new, fresh opinion of value on it. So it can be the property owner, it can be the attorney who's representing the estate. Yes?
Can I ask you to back up to the prior slide for just a moment, please? Certainly we understand that there's a difference between market value and investment value, because investment value is decidedly personal. But you have these other different types of values and for which you might have an appraisal. The purpose of the appraisal, are you saying that the purpose of the appraisal affects the value that is derived from the appraisal process? Or it's just the value that is derived is just, we're using it, we're doing the appraisal for one of these reasons, but the value is essentially unaffected by the reason.
Well, okay, great question. So for example, under investment value, the scenario I used before where the property owner had a very low basis in the land, market value would have told you the value is here, right? But investment value tells you from the cost approach, it's here. Market value tells you from the income and sales comparison approach that it's here. In order to be financially feasible, it's here.
Right. I understand the distinction between market and investment.
Right.
But if somebody's doing an appraisal for business or IRS tax, whatever the case may be, how would that purpose of the appraisal being done affect the value that is derived from the appraisal process?
I think he's just saying that obviously the value, the difference between liquidation value, disposition value, and fair market value, those are different concepts of value. They can vary. But if you're hired to estimate market value, why does it matter? Why does it matter the purpose of the appraisal or what the motivation of the person hired to do the appraisal? I guess we're trying to understand how the purpose of the appraisal affects the estimate of the value.
Well, typically it's not going to. Market value is market value. Right, it's just that the purpose can vary. The purpose is not gonna impact the value, but the
Okay, that's-
purpose can
that's-
vary. Market value is market value.
Right, okay.
Right, right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now you've kind of got an idea of values, you've got an idea of highest and best use, and now how do you get the assignments? Well, these are kind of the things that you can do in terms of valuation and consulting. And there's specialties in these, and there's general practice in these. And the most common one are appraisal reports and appraisal reviews. But there's certain companies that specialize in portfolio valuations. You have to be of a certain size. Typically, it's a national firm or a large regional firm that can do portfolio valuations because there's a short time frame associated with appraising 20 apartment complexes in the southeast. So if you're a firm of 10 people, you might be able to do 2 or 3 or 4 of those if they're in a generalized specific area. But if they're all spread out, then it's normally, portfolio valuations are usually done with much larger firms. You can do litigation support, and you can do litigation support through expert witness testimony, through forensic work. You're helping an attorney on a case. You may not estimate market value, but you may provide a lot of market research. You may provide a lot of data for them. You may review the other appraiser's work and give your opinion as to the quality and credibility of that appraisal and where the pitfalls or where those issues may be, so that the attorney has the support when they're doing cross-examination. They know where the weaknesses are in that appraisal report. You may do it up front on a say, an eminent domain case, where an attorney is working for a condomnee and you're doing some initial upfront work, so they want to establish, do we go forward with this, or do we accept the order of taking that the condemnation authority has provided? So there's lots of things that you can do in terms of valuation that are outside and beyond the traditional, let me do a traditional appraisal report. And there's actually now an appraisal review designation. So, you know, the MAI is a designation for commercial property, and now there's an actual designation that you can obtain that allows you to do nothing but appraisal review work. So if you work at a bank or an institution where you're in charge of ordering and reviewing those appraisals, that's the designation that you would want to have. And perhaps you already had the MAI designation as well. Market studies, we do a lot of market studies. Partial interest valuations. So you have a family limited partnership, or you may have undivided interests, or you may have divided interests. And so you're valuing the interest portion of that. So the family has, you know, 3 siblings, and they all have undivided interests. So in that case, it might be that the market value is this, and it's all split evenly. If it's a divided interest, where one sibling may have 52%, or let's say it's a joint venture, where one entity may have 52% and the other interest has 48%. So there's lots of different types of services, and these aren't all of them. I mean, if you can think of the reason you would need an appraisal report, it's been ordered. It's what keeps it fun. It's what keeps it different. It's the challenging part of what we do, because each assignment might be a little bit differently than just writing a normal appraisal report. Any questions? These are a few of the specializations that you see in the market from appraisers and valuation consultants. And so under financial institutions, that's pretty straightforward. That's your banks, your insurance companies, your federal, state, county, city governments. That's like your DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, road authorities, the Department of Transportation, the Expressway Authority, the property appraiser, the cities, your municipalities that you work in, the school boards. Schools are in real estate too. They have to project and plan 10, 15 years out in advance. And they're bound by budgets as well. So there's a lot of real estate in a county school board. Healthcare, that's pretty obvious. You're talking about medical office buildings, ACLFs, CCRCs, which is a continuing care retirement community. It's where you start in active adult living and you go all the way to the grave. They're all in one contained community. Some of those might be, I think it's Sun City over in the Brandon or Bradenton area. Some of you guys might be familiar with that area.
Sun City, sorry.
Sun City, yep.
Oh, Hammond's right here.
Oh, okay. There's a lot of emphasis on that right now. The demographics of the market right now is we are at the bottom of the tsunami on the baby boomer generation, and a lot of focus and emphasis is being put on healthcare, ACLFs, ALFs, assisted living facilities, dementia care, memory care. A lot of new construction is going to be focusing on this particular specialization. And the assisted living, ILFs, CCRCs are very heavily regulated because they do deal with patients and customers that may require serious care where medication is administered, so they're highly regulated. It's a highly specialized field. Marinas, golf courses, hospitality, hotels, special purpose properties. My very, very, very first appraisal, even before computers were around, but they were huge, was a ski resort in North Carolina. I never saw it, and it had about 15 different departments of revenue, the ski resort being one, the hotel, the sellout of the lots on the mountain, the restaurant, the horse stables, the golf course, and it went on and on and on. And my spreadsheet was about as long as this table, and making a mistake on it was very painful. Needless to say, I didn't become an expert in ski resorts. It's kind of hard to do that from Florida. But I do have friends who are appraisers out in Colorado, and they specialize in them. I have friends in Las Vegas who do nothing but casinos. If it's a property type that there's enough of, you can specialize in it and be very, very good.
Random question, but let's say you got a contract like value Hanover, like the stadium. Where would you even start? Would you value that on? Because how much they bring in for ticket sales and concessions, or cost basis, or just like looking at the swamp? I was just curious how you would value it.
Yeah, well, a lot of those are done through municipalities because there's tax incentives given to them.
Okay.
So a lot of that is valued based upon, they might issue bonds associated with the building of the stadium. So it's a very specialized type of analysis where you are doing a cost. You're looking at the cost because how are you going to determine at what price do you say, okay, we just can't afford this as a municipality anymore. So you have to look at it from a cost standpoint, but you also look at it from an income standpoint. Where can I get my money generated from? Where's the business value in this? And am I creating more goodwill and business value or over and above business value? You look at the number of seats, and in cases where you're estimating the value on one that's already built, in order to make it feasible, you may need to shrink the seats and add more seats. So, and you add whole different other lines of revenue. It's something that we don't do, but many of the large accounting departments or accounting companies have entities that specialize in large public-driven projects. Okay, so now we went through kind of the concept of highest and best use, but now you can apply that to you. And you can narrow down your focus on where do I want to be, what do I want to do, and is it financially feasible for me to do that? So the physically possible is, you know, where do I want to live? Do I want to stay in the States? Do I want to go international? Do I want to be in an urban environment? Do I want to be in a small city, a town? Do I want to move back home and be with my family? What's my environment? Do I want to be in a cold weather environment or a warm weather environment? I mean, those are obvious ones that you probably have already put a lot of thought to. So you can draw circles on these, and the middle concentric area that these cross over should be where your main interests and focus are in terms of what you want to do, where you want to be, and is it going to work for you financially, and are you going to be maximally productive in doing what those decisions do. So this exercise, if you do it and you draw the circles and you put financially or physically possible over here, legally permissible, we kind of are getting a little creative here, but under legally permissible, you want to know where am I going in terms of the kind of company I want to be with. You know, am I going to get any training, or am I just going to walk in and be, you know, kind of the jack of all trades where somebody just gives me a project and from day to day to day, that's how I'm going to do my job? Or are you going to go through a very formal training program that's 2 years long, and you're going to be working with a principal or a senior associate? You know, those are some of the questions that you should be asking when you're interviewing. And remember, it's a two-way street. It's not just us interviewing you. You're interviewing the company that you might want to spend a very long time with. So you want to know those answers. Am I going to be working for a company that does only hospitality valuation? And so now I'm doing, you know, small hotels, limited service, full service, resorts, or am I going to work for a firm that has a broad spectrum of property types? You know, I'll get every property type there is, but then I'll have the opportunity to move into a specialization down the road. Maybe 5 years down the road, I've done everything else, and now I really like doing shopping centers. So I would like to focus on that, spend the rest of my career working on retail. Am I going to do residential or commercial? You know, I say residential, and both automatically most people think of the listing agent that has, you know, your neighbor's listing. And that's not what I mean. When I mean residential is, I do residential appraisal work on large PUDs, on subdivisions, and that's what I mean by residential, is am I going to focus on the development side of residential? It's still under the purview of commercial real estate. It's just a focus on housing as opposed to commercial, you know, office building, shopping center, hotel. Am I with a company that's very entrepreneurial driven, or am I in a very structured environment where this is the way it is and here's your position? And those are important questions to know. If you're off the charts as an entrepreneur, you know, you need to know that. You need to know that maybe a large corporation or a very structured environment is not going to give you what you need. Conversely, if you're very structured and, you know, the thought of, you know, being on your own and being able to go any direction you want is frightening, then, you know, that's something that you need to think about as you're doing your job search. You know, how much flexibility do I have? I would think that a lot of you in this program would want a lot of flexibility. And to get at this level, you know, you're probably very high on the charts in terms of entrepreneurship. And that also allows you to do other things as a real estate practitioner. So you may be a consultant or an analyst or an appraiser, but you understand the mechanics of valuation and you see a great deal over here and you want to do it. Well, if you're with another type company, you may not have that freedom and flexibility to do your own stuff on the side. And that's just something that you need to think about as you're going through that interviewing process. Financially feasible. Am I on a salary? Am I straight commission? Is there a combination of the two? Can I get a combination of the two? Our firm, we have done both. We've put people on straight commission on day one. You sink or swim, and either you're gonna step up and make it work or you're not. We've done full salary, and we've done a combination of the two. You just have to find out what's gonna work for you. What are your income expectations? The appraisal profession is one of those industries that it takes a long time to get the skill set to be valuable to the company. It's an apprenticeship. It's something that you take several years to get comfortable to where you feel you have the confidence to do any type of valuation that's put on your desk. And it's just the fact that, you know, there's a lot of different property types out there. So unless you specialize, you know, and you're starting out and you're doing nothing but multifamily the whole time, you may be very good very quickly, but then you don't have exposure to any other property type. Now the same principles apply, valuing a shopping center as it does to an apartment complex, but you may struggle with the other one because you haven't had the exposure or the training to it. Are my financial goals more important than knowledge and experience? And you gotta be truly honest with yourself about that. You know, for some people, you know, income is critical, and that's the driving factor. And that's fine. And sometimes knowledge and experience are more important, usually when you're first starting out. You know, one's gonna drive the other. The more knowledge and experience you have, the higher fees you're gonna get on your assignments, the more opportunities you have to do more complex assignments, which are gonna be higher fees. And the more knowledge and experience you have a client base that's gonna give you referrals. So first starting out, it's tough. You have to make decisions that are comfortable for you in terms of what am I really wanting out of this? Now, the great thing about valuation that a lot of other professions in real estate don't provide for is there are a lot of increases if you go to work on say a fee basis. Your income can go up 20% a year. So you may start out lower than your peers, but if their incomes are only going up 3-4% a year because they're on salary, you know, you may exceed those in the second, third, fourth year. So there's benefits to both. There's also typically if you're in a fee shop, I say shop, but a fee firm, you typically have a little more flexibility with your personal life as well. You can come and go as long as you meet your deadlines. Most companies are pretty comfortable about that. You know, every firm is different, but we have people that come in at 10 and leave at 9 o'clock at night. We have people that work on the weekends but take 2 days off during the middle of the week. We don't care. What we care about is that they do their work to the best of their ability, it's accurate, it's credible, and it's on time. And then, you know, do I have a future with this company? Do I want a future with this company? Or am I here just to get a skill set? And then what I really want to do is investment. I want to be an investment broker, but I got to learn how to structure an affordable housing complex before I can go do what I really want to do. So it can be a great stepping stone for your future somewhere else. It can be a great opportunity and a great career for you if you decide to stay with it. The other, Tim knows this because he's been in the profession before, and he knows that I'm about the average age of appraisers. So I'm pretty old, and there are not a lot of young people in the profession, and you can see that there's going to be a real supply-demand issue on this. So when there are your peers who are lenders, who are developers, who are attorneys, who are going to be picking up the phone wanting to call their peers, there's not a lot of supply for them to reach out to. So I have job security forever. I don't want it forever, but I've got pretty good job security. And there's great opportunities for young people because eventually we're going to want to retire one day. And I'd like to retire by choice. So understand that, you know, it's an opportunity that you can pick up and take it anywhere in the country. You can take it internationally. The Appraisal Institute teaches in China, they teach in South America, they teach in Europe, they teach in Canada. So if you have an opportunity where you can work on a project in China for 3 years and enjoy the world and travel, those opportunities are available. And then risk and reward. You know, are you a high-risk person where, you know, it doesn't matter if, you know, you get a paycheck or not? You can go 2 or 3 years without income? Or is that income pretty important to you, and the risk tolerance is pretty low? So those are some of the things I think you need to take into account when you decide, is this for me? And even if it's not, even if valuation is not for you, that's a good exercise to use for anything else. Leasing, brokerage, management, real estate law, you know, but be truthful to yourself about your characteristics and who you are and what drives you. Because you want to do something that every single day in the morning you wake up and you're excited to go to work. It's called work for a reason, because it's work. But you can still enjoy it, you can take pride in it, and if you work hard at it, you can be very good at it. So, if it might be something that you're considering, what do you do now? Well, I'm kind of if you're going to be good at something, you're going to go all in. And I believe to do that, you have to be somewhat of a Renaissance type person. And you need to know an awful lot about everything. Eventually, you can specialize, and it really doesn't matter what else is going on out there. But initially, I think it's important that you read everything you can about the topics and about the profession or about the interest that you're going into. If capital markets is your thing, then you need to do all the research you can do on capital markets. You need to know the players, you need to network, you need to find the doors that will open up for you and take advantage of the board members in the center to help you do that. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you be as successful as you can be. And some of you may end up being my clients. It's happened. I've had students from every single class turn into my clients, which is wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. So I know you're all connected on social media. I don't have to tell you that. But use it to your advantage. Don't just take it for advantage. Use it and put yourself out there so that people know who you are, what you're doing, and be your own promoter. There's nothing wrong with that. It's wonderful, and some of the most successful people in real estate I know are excellent at it. Excellent at it. So I have 2 sons, took them through the high school process. They fortunately were able to get into Florida. But one of the things that the people told us, you know, before we went through the whole acceptance process and all that was, talk to your friends' parents and your parents' friends. Well, you've got board members, you've got faculty, but you've also got another network out there that's extremely beneficial. And they're also non-judgmental, and they have a vested interest in you, your family and your friends. So reach out to them as well. They may have the best opportunity for you. It may be your dad's best friend knows so-and-so who can get you in front of them. They may not have a job for you, but you may be able to sit down with them and talk to them about how did they get to be successful? What did they do that really launched them into their career? What did they do differently than their peers to set them above and beyond everybody else? And then, of course, you have to have the education. You guys are doing that already. But with every real estate profession, maybe with the exception of a few, you're going to have to educate yourself all the time, consistently. Continuing education is required for most designations, whether you're a CCIM, whether you're a broker, whether you're SIOR, an appraiser. But use that to your advantage. Don't just stick with the same continuing education that you have from your own organization. Reach out and cross the aisle and go, if I'm an SIOR, I may go over to NAOP and get my education from them 1 year. Because then I meet new people in NAOP that I didn't know before, and I've got the education that's a little bit different than what I had before. I'm learning different things. I'm learning about how they look at real estate and what are the important aspects that they deal with. So then the next time I go to appraise a multi-tenant office building, let's say it's a sustainable green project, I now know who to reach out to, and I have some idea of what they're looking for, instead of staying over here where I'm comfortable and I know everybody and I get the same education year after year after year. Just like anything else, real estate reinvents itself. Trends in the industry change. One property may be functionally obsolete because it's an old warehouse and it's got low roofs. An office building may be obsolete because of the technology that it doesn't have. Maybe the only 80,000 square feet available in the market for, let's say, Amazon, who's going to come in and occupy 80,000 square feet or needs 80,000 square feet, but they just didn't keep up with the technology. So all the ones on the, I guess on this side, LinkedIn, these are places that you can go to, and some of you probably are already on them, but there's other ones that you can get onto that are free, and they have news feeds every single morning, every single afternoon, big announcements, job opportunities. Here are the players in the market. Start getting on these sites, reading them, finding out who the players are. And those are the places where you're going to say, okay, now I know what's going on in Miami, so if I want to relocate in South Florida and I want to do X, here's a big player in that market. And I've gone, and now I can go into my interview and have a little bit of knowledge about what I'm talking about and who in that market I need to be seeing and talking to. The Appraisal Institute is the professional organization that I belong to. I belong to a couple of other ones, but this is the one that my designation is from. And I'm going to give you a couple of contacts for the Appraisal Institute that will give you more information in terms of, so the MSRE program here is part of the graduate program that the Appraisal Institute recognizes. So a lot of the coursework that you're taking, you'll get full credit for towards MAI designation. Save you a lot of time, a lot of money. The average class is about $750. So when you get out of school, you may have 3 or 4 of those classes already under your belt, and you can get to a trainee designation a lot quicker, and it will be much less expensive. These are some of the sites. The Florida Real Estate Appraisal Board is, the states also have, it's not a certification as much as it is a license. If you're doing appraisal work in the state of Florida, you have to be licensed with the state of Florida. That's their site that kind of outlines what's required to become an appraisal trainee and also to get certified. At the very least, you have to be certified. You can have a designation on top of that, but at the very least, you have to have a certification. There's an AI student affiliate. So for a very small amount of money, you guys can be an affiliate with the Appraisal Institute and have all the benefits as well. I'd be happy to take you to any of the meetings. Come as my guest. I'll introduce you to, the Appraisal Institute, the local chapters. I've been very involved over the years, and it's a great organization. There's also a scholarship. There's scholarships available for students who are interested in pursuing the career. And we've got information that we can give you to that. I think we pass it out in the February meeting, but there's actually there is more money than there are applicants. So last year we couldn't get rid of all the money that there was for student scholarships. So if you want to take advantage of that, let me know. We'll try and get you the applications and the information that you need to make the application. I'm sorry about the size of the other stuff. That's the direct printout from the Appraisal Institute website that talks about the master's program. You can log on to there and it'll direct you directly to it and take you through the steps of everything that you need in terms of the requirements. And you can see number 6 up there is the University of Florida. There's more than 8, but that was just the main page. And that it's not in any kind of special ranking. It's just that's the way it was on their website page. Any questions so far? Yes.
Could you elaborate maybe a couple of bullet points on the skill sets that folks wanting to go into your profession really should have in focus and start honing on, for example, perhaps analytical writing, detailed cash flow modeling, lease abstraction, which is extremely important. Some of those things that students, while they're here, can kind of seek out and polish their skill sets, perhaps Excel or Argus or anything in professional community, something. What is it in your field that you find are really the critical elements and skill sets that help set people apart?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I would say one of the most important skill sets to have is you have to write well. You are telling a story. You're writing a report where you're kind of the reporter on the sideline watching the game, and you have to tell your reader what's going on. So you have to have good communication skills, good writing skills. So if you don't have a good command of writing, I would say take a couple of writing classes and take a couple of business writing classes. It doesn't mean that you can't do this. It just means that you'll be better at it. You'll be much better at it. It's something that if you're going to go down that path, whether you're going to do appraisals, valuation, no matter what you're going to do in real estate, you're going to have to write a report or a memo or a brochure or something, and that's going to require writing skills. So I would say writing skills are probably the most important. You can learn the cash flow and you can learn the Argus, but you also have to have, I would say, a curious mind. You have to constantly ask yourself the questions, does that make sense? Did I understand that correctly? Did I read that clause in the lease and interpret it the way I think it was supposed to be interpreted? You constantly have to ask yourself questions. You're the CSI of real estate. You guys are the detectives. You're the one going after every lead, trying to get the correct and most accurate answer out there. And the way you do that is you have a curious mind. You also have to have critical thinking skills. So you have to know, this doesn't make sense. Because it doesn't make sense, now I have to do this. And if you don't have those, I'm not sure, I don't know, maybe there are classes that you can take to hone that skill. But I think if you are curious with your mind, you'll be better at the critical thinking skills. Because you just can't take this stuff and assume that it's another warehouse property. It's a cookie cutter, I'll put this out in 2 days. There may be something out there on the date of the inspection that you notice that is absolutely critical to the value of that property. And if you're not thinking that way, then you're opening yourself up to liability. You're not doing your client any good. You've got the wrong answer. You're inaccurate. And, it wasn't your best work. So, curiosity, critical thinking skills, good writing skills. I think the cash flow part, if you're trained correctly and you take the right classes, that can be learned. That, but they're getting that here, right?
One out there.
Okay. Any other questions?